students, let us talk about connective tissue. So, what do you think would be a connective tissue? Children, as the name suggests, that means the tissue which connects something, right? Has to be connective tissue. The tissue which connects something, that has to be a connective tissue. And actually we are partially connects. Children, talking about the connective tissue connects and holds the body together. So it connects the different part of the body and holds the body together. So when you think of connective tissue, you can think of a skeleton as shown in the figure. If you look at this skeleton, what do you see? This skeleton later, along with flesh and all other accessories, form the human being, right? But the skeleton, if you look at, what does it actually doing? It actually doing forming the framework of the body, and it is the connecting different parts. It connects the finger to the hand, hands to the shoulder, to the chest, to the back, and that is why it is connecting the entire body. So that tissue which connects the body together is known as connective tissue. So children, when we talk about the definition of the connective tissue, so we can define connective tissue as connective tissue are the group of tissues which connect or bind the other tissues in the body. So this is the very good or the simple definition of connective tissue. Children, we can also define connective tissue as tissue that supports, protect and give structure to the tissue and organs in the body is known as connective tissue. So this is the proper definition of the connective tissue, and we have seen that connective tissue is actually work as a framework, right? It gives framework to our body. ये हमारी framework क्या होता है? ढांचा. ये हमारी body को एक ढांचा provide करता है, right? Now children, talking about the connective tissue, so it is the most diverse of all animal tissues type. So among the all four types which we are going to discuss, that is epithelial, connective, muscular and nervous, ये फोर काइंड के एनिमल टिश्यूज़ होते हैं जो हम अपनी पिछली क्लास में डिस्कस किया था. एंड connective tissue is the most diverse type of tissue. Now children, why do I mean by diverse? What do I mean by diverse? Children, it means that this tissue ranges from fluid-like structure to extremely hard structure, right? For example, if I started the example of connective tissue, I will start with bone, tendon, ligament, blood. So all these are connective tissue. So when do you think of a bone? Do you think that bone is something fluid-like or something very delicate? No. Yes, exactly. No. Bone is something which is rough, tough and hard, right? So bone is a connective tissue. On the other hand, we are talking about the other example of connective tissue, that is the blood, right? So talking about the blood is also a connective tissue. So I know it might be very surprised, but it's true. Blood is also a connective tissue, but blood is a fluid. So that means connective tissue can be as fluid as blood, and it can be hard as bones, right? So that is why we see that it is a very diverse. It has what? it has got a diversity ranges, right? So wide variety of ranges are present in the connective tissue, as liquid, as fluid as blood, and as hard as bones, right? So this connective tissue actually acts as a glue because it connects different organs. So when you think of examples as bone, so you can understand how bone act as a glue. I mean, because of bone also joined together. Because of these joints, the entire body is connected, right? So bones act as a glue which make things that stick together, right? And it forms the framework of body. So at least get some idea about connective tissue, something like bone, like cartilage, like ligament, because all these things actually connects the different body parts. That is why they are connective tissue, right? Now children, let us spend some more time on to discuss about the structure of the connective tissue. Before moving to the connective tissue, children, there are some important types of connective tissue. Talking about the connective tissue types, so that is bone, tendon, ligament, cartilage, as I just mentioned now, right? So let us spend more time on the structure of connective tissue. Children, talking about the structure of connective tissue, so as the epithelial tissue, it also have basal as well as free surface end, right? So similar in case of connective tissue, right? So important connective tissue which is present in our body. So let us see that what are the important types of connective tissue which is present in our body. So that is the very important question which generally arise in our mind, whether I have discussed just now. So what are those important types? So those important types are bones, tendons, ligament, and cartilage. Bones because it connects different body parts together. Tendons connects two bones. Cartilage which forms framework of many different organs, right? So these are some most commonly found connective tissue. I'm sure all of you would have heard these terms, right? Chalo. Now let us talk about the structure and composition of connective tissue in more detail. Now children, how does it look like? And what is connective tissue made up of? These are some important questions which generally arise in our mind that when we talk about the structure and composition of the connective tissue. So the very first important thing, that cells forming connective tissue are widely spaced. Now if you compared it with epithelial tissue, what happened in epithelial tissue? What we have discussed in epithelial tissue? There we saw that the intercellular space was minimum. The cells was closely or tightly packed with each other. क्योंकि जो epithelial cells tissue होते हैं वो protective covering बनाते हैं, इसलिए ज़रूरी होता है कि उनके बीच में कोई space ना हो. In epithelial cells, why are the cell closely packed? Yes, they are closely packed because epithelial cell act as the boundary, and boundary was to be rigid, so that is why they are compactly packed. There should not be any leakage in the boundary, and that is why the intercellular space are least. But in case of connective tissue, what do we want? We want to connective tissue to have a lot of flexibility, and that is why the cells forming the connective tissue are widely spaced. Are you getting my point? Right. Because cells are widely spaced, so there is a lot of intercellular spaces, right? So this is the intercellular spaces which is present. So that intercellular space is filled with dense fluid-like structure, and that dense fluid-like structure is known as intercellular matrix, or we can also say as extracellular matrix. Now I will explain these two terms with detail. right? Because it might create some confusion. Because children, many students, not only students, many people are confused with these terms: intercellular, intracellular and extracellular. So these are three important terms which basically create confusion. They actually don't know the difference between these three terms, right? Now children, talking about the intercellular. Intercellular space is the space between the cells. Let us suppose if these circles are the cells. So the space which is present between these cells are known as intercellular space, right? Now when I say intracellular, intracellular space is the space within the cell. Intra always means within. तो ये जो सेल हैं, तो इन सेल के बीच में जो ये ब्लू कलर का जो स्पेस है, कौन सा स्पेस कहलाएगा? इंट्रासेल्युलर स्पेस. इंटरसेल्युलर स्पेस दो सेल के बीच का स्पेस, और इंटरसेल्युलर स्पेस इस एक सेल के बीच का ये स्पेस, दैट इज़ नोन एज इंट्रासेल्युलर स्पेस. एक और एग्जाम्पल मैं आपको देती हूँ. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इन स्कूल वी हैव डिफरेंट हाउस, राइट? इन स्कूल वी हैव डिफरेंट हाउसेस. जैसे ग्रीन हाउस है, रेड हाउस है, ऑरेंज हाउस है आपके, है ना? सो वी अरेंज इंटर हाउस कंपटीशन. मीन्स कंपटीशन बिटवीन डिफरेंट हाउसेस ऑफ द स्कूल्स. When you say intra-house competition, intra-house competition means the competition is among the student of same house. जैसे कि आपका एक हाउस है ग्रीन हाउस, एक हाउस है ऑरेंज हाउस, राइट? तो जो कंपटीशन ग्रीन हाउस के बच्चे और ऑरेंज हाउस के बच्चों के बीच में होगा, वो कंपटीशन कहलाएगा इंटर कंपटीशन. ठीक है? और लेट अस सपोज दिस इज़ द ग्रीन हाउस, और ग्रीन हाउस के बच्चों के बीच में कंपटीशन कराया जाए तो वो कहलाता है इंट्रा हाउस कंपटीशन, राइट? क्लियर? व्हाट डज एक्स्ट्रा सेल्यूलर मीन्स? बच्चे, एक्स्ट्रा मीन्स आउटसाइड. सो आउटसाइड द सेल, लेट अस सपोज दिस इज द सेल. So outside the cell, whatever the space is there, that space is known as intracellular space. यही तो चीज़ हमने intercellular में भी बताई थी. So what do you see? You see intercellular or extracellular are the same thing. Now understood? Both are actually the same. So that is why we say intercellular space is filled with intercellular or extracellular fluid. So here I also use both the term, so please do not get confused. So with this, let us have a look on the structure of connective tissue. So this is the structure of connective tissue, how it is look like. Now children, the cells shown in the blue color are widely spaced. They are quite away from each other. And so the purple color thing, what you have seen is the intercellular matrix. So that space is known as intracellular space, and that is intracellular space is filled with a fluid. तो वो fluid क्या कहलाता है? Intercellular matrix या फिर extracellular matrix. So see how much open space is there between the cells. So they have huge intercellular spaces, right? Okay. So let us see what is extracellular matrix composed of. ये extracellular matrix जो है, ये जो पर्पल कलर से दिखाया हुआ है, ये extracellular matrix किन चीज़ों से मिलकर के बनता है? Now this extracellular matrix is composed of, first it consists of ground substance, and some fibers, right? So ground substance क्या हुआ? Fills basically the substance which fill the space between the cells, right? So that is known as ground substance, and it is a high water content. And fibers, so it is a form of protein, and 3 type of fibers are secreted by connective tissue, that is collagen fiber, reticular fiber, or elastic fiber, right? So first of all, let us see what is ground substance, right? So what is ground substance actually? Ground substance is a fluid-like substance which fill the space between the cells and the fiber. So that means the cell of the connective tissue, they are embedded into extracellular matrix, and in this matrix again made up of 2 types. First is the ground substance and other one is the fiber. So if you look at the figure, this figure, you can see that this is the extracellular matrix, right? So this is the extracellular matrix, and this extracellular matrix have these fibers. So fibers are there, and the remaining fluid is known as ground substance. The ground substance has high water content. It is quite fluidy in nature. What about the fibers? The fibers are form of protein, and generally 3 type of fibers are secreted by connective tissue. These are collagen, reticular, and elastic. They are generally present in connective tissue, right? And children, talking about the composition, so the ratio of component vary from type of connective tissue. ये इन सब चीज़ों का जो रेशो है वो हर कनेक्टिव टिश्यू में वेरी करता है. How the extracellular matrix exactly being that depend upon the function of the particular type of connective tissue. And another thing is that the proportion of the cell, ground substance, fibers varies from one type of connective tissue to the another type of connective tissue, right? So that is why there is a wide variety of connective tissue is there. अगर ग्राउंड सब्सटेंस ज़्यादा होगा तो फ्लेक्सिबल हो जाएगा, फ्लूइडिटी आ जाएगी, जैसे कि ब्लड. और अगर ग्राउंड सब्सटेंस कम होके फाइबर और सेल की मात्रा बढ़ जाएगी तो वो हार्ड हो जाएगा, जैसे कि बोन. तो यही एक रीज़न है जिसकी वजह से जो कनेक्टिव टिश्यू है वो कई वैरायटी में प्रेजेंट है, राइट? So now let us talk about the role of ground substance. Children, it maintain the shape of the tissue and base of the tissue, right? So this is the very important function which is performed by the ground substance, because it gives shape to the tissue, it provides base to the tissue, it provides structure to the tissue, right? So I hope I would able to clear the structure of connective tissue. So now let us look at the 3 type of fibers which we talked about. First one is the collagen fiber. So children, it is the most common type of fiber. It is flexible with high tensile strength. Tensile strength क्या होती है? The resistance of material for breaking, right, under the tension. So this is the tensile strength, and it is very flexible and having the high tensile strength, right, because it is very flexible. That is the only reason. It is found in bones, tendons, dermis of skin, etc. Talking about the reticular fiber, it is arranged in a mesh-like pattern. It is clearly visible in this picture. Mesh-like means hodgepodge pattern में होता है ये, right? सो इस फिगर में भी ठीक से दिख रहा है कि ये जो ब्लू कलर का दिखाया है, ये ब्लू कलर का आप देख रहे हो कि एक मैश लाइक नेटवर्क लाइक पैटर्न है. सो इट इज़ प्रेजेंट इन अ मैश लाइक पैटर्न. दे हैव हाई शुगर कंटेंट. इट इज़ फाउंड इन द बाउंड्री ऑफ कनेक्टिव टिश्यू, नर्व्स एंड मसल सेल्स. Talking about the third category, that is the elastic fiber. So it is a very thin fiber and arranged in branching pattern. It's supposed to cope with the stretch and distension and thus prevent tearing. So children, we can say that collagen together with elastic are responsible for the flexibility of the connective tissue, right? So this is about the connective tissue. So this is the composition of connective tissue that we have discussed, that these are the component. What are those component? That the cells and the matrix, और जो matrix होता है वो बना होता है ground substance का और fiber का. So this is the flow chart for the same, and it is a complete connective tissue, different component, cell and the matrix. This is the cell. How many type of cells? So these are the different type of cells of connective tissue. Talking about the matrix, it is made up of by ground substance and fiber, which we have discussed in our previous slide. So these are the different component of the ground substance, and these are the fiber which is present. So this is the all over component of the connective tissue, right? In the next video, we will discuss about the types of connective tissue in detail. Thank you and have a nice day.